I'll break down this debate on whether women should vote and whether divorce should be banned in 3 rounds. I'll give my take on who I think is winning at the end of each round, and at the very end, I'll share who I think won the debate and why. Now, while I don't agree with all of Pearl's opinions, I'll be strictly focusing on their communication to determine who I think argued more persuasively. Now, here's round 1, where Pearl delivers her rationale.
I found out that only 5% of women wanted the right to vote. And I couldn't figure out why would women not. No, it's true. It's true. If you look it up.
At the time.
Men are 80 to 90% of the military. They run all of the infrastructures that make society run. So I just think if we want an equal say in society, then be equal. Do 50% of the hard jobs.
And here's another reason she gave.
Before, you weren't trying to divide a family. It was one family unit. You had one vote for the family. I mean, I don't think it's good for a family to have 2 votes.
Now, before sharing what Ava said, I'll share how I would have responded if I were debating against Pearl. First, I'd start by simply seeking to understand her perspective. I would not laugh like Ava does right here. The rule of thumb is that to win any argument, you must paraphrase the other person's point in a manner that they would find acceptable before you begin to respond. Specifically, here's what I would have said. It seems to me that you think women shouldn't vote because you think that women don't contribute equally as men do to society, and you think that their family will be divided if they could vote. Is that right? By actively listening like this, you're not admitting that the other side is right, but rather you're disarming the opponent by taking a combative stance, you're ensuring that both of you are on the same page, and you're buying critical time to question their points. Instead, watch how Ava responds.
You're putting down a perhaps correct in some universe.
Which stats?
They just kind of don't really add up. I mean, just to take you back to women's writings that you've allegedly read. I mean, at
allegedly?
The time, well,
what do you mean allegedly?
At the time that you're talking about, you know, women weren't really allowed to write. They weren't allowed to go to school.
Yes, they were.
Write.
Yes, they
so
were. That's incorrect. The first female property owner was in the 1600s. The idea that women couldn't work and couldn't.
I'm so sorry, but that would be inherited property.
The first female millionaire was in the late 1800s.
And was that inherited?
No, it wasn't. It was self-made.
So I gotta ding Ava on many fronts here. First, she never even paraphrases Pearl's main point. Second, she uses what I call the sneak in by saying,
just to take you back to the women's writings that you've allegedly read.
This is where you insert a subtle dig at your opponent without giving them the chance to respond to that. This reveals Ava's true colors, that her primary intent is to prove that Pearl is wrong rather than seek a healthy debate. And it's perfectly appropriate for Pearl to jump in because Ava is unfairly mischaracterizing her. Finally, Ava's also reacting impulsively. You can tell this because even if you hear facts that don't jive with your understanding of the world, don't claim the facts are wrong unless you're 100% sure they are wrong. Because if you're wrong, it'll actually make you look really stupid. And in this case, Pearl is actually right. The first self-made millionaire in America was Madam C.J. Walker, who founded a successful beauty company for African Americans in the late 1800s. And ultimately, by communicating like this, Ava never even gives herself the opportunity to share her own point of view. So after round 1, the clear advantage goes to Pearl. Now in round 2, let's see if Ava can actually fight back.
I don't think men or women are equal until we do the equal work. So no, listen. Go apply to be on the oil rigs. Go be a plumber. Go be an electrician. Go be on the front lines of the military. And then we should have equal rights. But until feminists are willing to do that, I don't believe we should have the freedom without the responsibility.
Okay,
so before sharing how Ava responds, this is how I would have responded if I were Ava. The first thing I would have done is seek specificity. The key here is to ask for how rather than why. So in this case, instead of asking, why do you think that women shouldn't vote until they do equal work as men do? I would have asked Pearl, how is the work that women disproportionately do, ranging from nursing, pharmaceuticals, teaching, childcare, not equal to the work that men do? The key here is that when you require people to answer the how rather than the why, you're revealing the shallowness behind their claims. Now let's see how Ava responded.
Okay, well, I don't think that I'm physically built for that. You might be, but I'm absolutely not. You said you were
Wow.
You said you were a volleyball player, and so you've got more strength than I do. I don't think
but
that
I
can do those jobs.
I don't have more strength than the average man.
I'm not going to take your right away to do it.
Now this is problematic because Ava's doing a personal attack. When you get your opponent to go beyond the confines of the topic at hand, it reveals that they really don't care to hear your perspective. They just want to win and make you look foolish in the process. Now, Ava does begin to do something that I really like right here.
When you start making calls out like repeal the 19th, women shouldn't be allowed to vote, how is that helping young men? Because these young men have women in their lives, they have mothers, they have sisters, they have teachers, and they turn around, they don't know how to act around women because you're giving them license to be misogynistic.
What I specifically like is when Ava says,
how is that helping young men?
Here, I'm starting to think that Ava's trying to appeal to Pearl's alternative identity. The idea here is that you position your argument as aspirational for your opponent. In this case, Ava is effectively saying, Pearl, you care about helping young men in our society, right? Well, how is the message that the work men do better than the work women do actually helping men? Instead, Ava takes the argument too far by saying,
you're giving them license to be misogynistic.
Here, I'd caution against your wording. By saying you're doing this, it's framed as an accusation. This causes Pearl to say, no, I'm not doing what you're saying I'm doing. I'm actually doing this instead. This allows Pearl to avoid addressing the way more interesting topic head on, which is what I believe Ava would have wanted, the impact on Pearl's rhetoric on young men. So after round 2, the advantage still lies with Pearl. Now let's examine Pearl's very interesting views on marriage in the final round 3.
I don't think what we have today is really marriage. What is marriage? It's for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. That's what marriage is supposed to be. But feminists have ruined marriage for the people that actually believe in marriage.
How?
When there's a 50% divorce rate.
And here's Ava's rebuttal.
Doesn't the sanctity of marriage also rely on the woman being a virgin, so you wouldn't be able to get married?
What do you mean?
Well, you've spoken quite openly about how you're not a virgin, and so if you want to preserve that sanctity of marriage, then I just think that you're upholding standards that you don't actually live by.
And that's a fair complaint. I wish I was. But, we can't go back. I don't know what you want me to say.
This is another clear out of bounds comment that you want to avoid. But Pearl handles it pretty well. Specifically, she says,
that's a fair complaint. I wish I was. But, we can't go back. I don't know what you want me to say.
The key here is that you should agree with something that your opponent says. The reason is that when you agree to something that they say, you're making your opponent look really foolish for taking it to a personal level. And furthermore, agreeing does not mean that you're conceding your point of view, but it can effectively diffuse a tense situation. But the big missed opportunity that I saw from this debate was when Piers asked Pearl whether she would 100% be with the man that she chose to marry, no matter what happens.
Yes, for the vows that we're supposed to live by.
How do you know you can keep them?
I mean, I think it's a choice. And that's the thing, women are so willing to leave marriages because they're not happy. This is not about happiness. The most important thing is the children.
Pearl's point about choice is something that Piers agrees to and even causes Ava to agree partially.
Well, I mean, I believe in agency, so I think that if a woman is going to look after her children in divorce, that's absolutely fine. I also believe in your right to speak your mind about it. What I don't understand...
I'd like to say, even before the 1920s,
do you know what I mean?
Women could speak openly. This idea that, women couldn't talk the last 500 years. There have been women throughout history.
I know, but the American state education system has failed.
Now, I would have loved for Ava to just finish her point, but just as she was about to express her difference in opinion, Pearl immediately interrupts her. And that's something I would never recommend. But it's clear that Pearl has no desire at this point to even hear Ava's point because she's practically all respect for someone who's resorted to personal attacks and has shown no interest in Pearl's argument. So at the end of this debate, there's a lot of things that I would have done differently on either side. But I am going to declare Pearl the winner of this argument for 3 main reasons. First, Pearl articulates her point several times, unlike Ava. Second, she uses evidence to back up her claims. And third, she doesn't resort to any personal attacks. And ultimately, we as the audience were the biggest winners to watch this entertaining piece of work. Just like we were when we watched these arguments between Andrew Tate and the BBC and Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson. Check out the breakdown right here.